Hi, and welcome to Dani After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have author Tony Wright. You may recognize that name because I recently did a book review of Things Aren't Right, the Disappearance of the Yuba County Five. So, Tony Wright, according to his Amazon bio, is the author of The Things Aren't Right, the Disappearance of the Yuba County Five. He's the author of 2 comic books and a graphic novel with Source Point Press. Tony is an archivist, father, husband, and a lost soul of rock and roll. When he is not writing, he is spending time with his family or enjoying a good meal. Tony has been featured as a Yuba County Five case expert on the Mopac audio podcast Yuba County Five, and was also featured as a case expert on the Motor Trend TV show Autobiography Cold Case. So without further ado, welcome to Dani After Dark, author Tony Wright. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Dani. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming. How are you doing?
Doing well, surviving the winter, and it's about as all we can do here in January.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I did the review of the book, Things Aren't Right, that was one episode that I've reached out to you about that I typically don't cover unsolved cases on my channel, but in regards to book reviews, that doesn't matter. But this was one where so many people had questions on this case and on this book that I thought it would be a great opportunity to have you on and kind of talk about it a little bit more in depth, and then also just from the author perspective of writing this book. So let's go ahead and do that. So Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then also how and when you started getting into writing.
So I work in archives. I've done so for about 28 years. So I've had a lot of experience in local government archives where we store records and we have, historical information of importance, and we help researchers and citizens and local government officials do whatever they got to do or find the files they need to find. And I'm always been interested in writing, and I think I've done quite a bit of writing since about, I'd say 2009. And Things Aren't Right's my first jump into the world of true crime. It was probably 2018 when I first heard about the case and thought it was a very interesting story regarding the Yuba County Five, and thought, wow, I'd like to read a book about that. So I checked the library, no luck, checked Amazon, no luck. And within a year, I decided to try writing a book. And I thought, man, 2020 seems like the right kind of year for me to just, do what I got to do to write a book. And the world had other plans, but I was able to do so much from home as far as research and interviewing people and gathering as much data as possible. And by 2021, I was able to travel to California and research the case of the Yuba County Five. So yeah, that's how I got into the case. I just wanted to read a book about the case, and then nothing was available. So I said, okay, I guess I'm writing the book. I've helped people research books before. I know what to do for the most part. And I had no idea how long it would take me or what would happen. But I basically spent about 2020 to 2023 working on the book. So that was the journey. And I think with the whole COVID situation, it kind of made the whole thing like much more drawn out, just because so much is happening. And but yeah, it was a great experience. I'm glad I got to meet the families and do all the research I was able to do.
Yeah, I do definitely want to touch base on the families as we kind of continue on talking. But for those who are not familiar with this case, can you give just a brief explanation of what this case is about and who were the 5 men at the center of this case?
Yeah, on February 24th, 1978, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jackie Hewitt, and Gary Mathias, they left Yuba County, California, and drove north to a town called Chico. They attended a basketball game at Chico State University. Their favorite team, UC Davis, was having an away game, and it was getting towards the end of the season. They really loved their basketball team. They want to see their team win like their conference and maybe go off to the playoffs. And this game wasn't just like, let's go watch UC Davis. It was more like a big motivator for these guys because they ranged in ages from 24 to 32. And 4 of the men had intellectual disabilities. One person had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they were part of a local, basically like adult program for people with disabilities called the Gateway Projects. And Gateway had their own Special Olympics basketball team. And the next day they would go down to Sacramento, play in a tournament. And if they won that tournament, they would head to Los Angeles in the summer for this main Special Olympics basketball tournament in California. So this was like, we got a college basketball game on Friday. Saturday's our basketball game. And if everything goes right, we'll watch our favorite team win, we'll win our tournament, and we'll go to Los Angeles. So they attend the basketball game, but when they leave, they never come home. So the families are very puzzled and worried about what was going on. These guys had traveled out of town before. They're responsible. They would call if they ever were late or something were going wrong. They'd give them a heads up. So they're not home on Saturday. There's no sign of them Sunday. There's no sign of them on Monday. Tuesday night, someone reports to the sheriff's department, hey, I found the car that those guys are traveling in, and it's in the Plumas National Forest. And that's like a major, drive 70 miles in the wrong direction up into the foothills of the Plumas National Forest where the Sierra Nevadas are located. And so there's a car, the guys are nowhere to be found, and a massive search and rescue operation is underway. And by June of that same year, 4 of the men were found. They had died, and 1 man was never found. And to this day, there's no rhyme or reason to why they vanished and what happened that night. It's so puzzling. And I tell people this case can be a journey into madness. And with my book, it's basically the best thing we can put together as far as like a comprehensive review of the case. So, and this is what happened February 24th. We know that they disappeared after a basketball game. After that, we have like some pieces of information, but it's not a complete story. And it's like you said, it is an unsolved mystery to this day.
Yeah. So when you wanted to start working on writing a book about this case, and you did mention earlier about talking and working with the families, how did that work in regards to the reaction from the victims' families? Just 5 different families. I'm sure there might have been a variety of different reactions, but can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
I started contacting Ted Weir's family towards the end of 2019. And I didn't know how this was going to go over. I thought if I get any roadblocks or any major problems, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. But when I talked to Ted Weir's brother, he was like, okay, if that's what you're going to do, then all right, let's see what happens. And the only family that wasn't interviewed was Bill Sterling's family. But, when I talked to them, they said, we don't talk to the press or anyone about this case and haven't done so since 78. But the other families were on board. If there's a book, then there's a book, and let's get the correct information out of there. Some people were a bit reluctant to, with me calling, and they're trying to figure out what my goal was with this book, and what my theories were, and what did I know, and what was I going to do. So it's kind of you're kind of walking a tightrope in a way, because it's not easy to, have people relive this really bad situation, this really bad moment in their lives. So you have to be like really respectful of that, and kind of, build these interviews up and kind of tell them like, hey, let's do the interview, and it'll be this day, this time. And the more I talked to them, the more we really got along. And that's very lucky for me that everyone was incredibly nice, incredibly supportive, wanted a good story to be out there for the families. And I was Um, so fortunate to, have their approval and their blessing, because I told them I just want to tell the right story and get the information correct, because I think the last thing people want is like some book that's just, totally tabloid and garbage. And, that's not what these families deserve. They want the real story out there and their perspective shared with the world. And they want everyone to get to know the five a little bit better.
Yeah. And exactly what you just said right there, that is something that was one of my biggest takeaways from reading your book. It is incredibly victim focused, and you don't see that. I mean, I do a lot of reading. I'm just a book nerd at heart, and you don't see many true crime books, if you will, that focus on the victims. I mean, at most maybe a paragraph, but your book had like full chapters on each of these men, to the point where reading it, I almost felt like I knew them, because you gave so much detail into who these men were. And you don't see that with other books. So I just want to commend you for that. And you definitely did an excellent job portraying these men as who they were.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's when I was working on the book, I was gathering all my information. I said, okay, how many pages am I going to get out of this book? Because I think at the end, it's something like 345, which is crazy.
I can
I
tell
know,
you right now,
yeah, my copy
301.
301. I mean, yeah, and my editor really trimmed it down. So I have no idea what I could have done. That could have turned into War and Peace, but yeah, I mean, I read true crime too, and there are some books where you just have to go, huh, this is what you're dedicating to the person that's sort of the center of this story. I mean, that's not really what I was looking for. So when I was working on the book, I said, ooh, a chapter for each of the guys. That makes a lot of sense, because I think I've got a lot of information. Let's put this to good use. And so many people I've talked to said, I'm so glad you had all these chapters on the guys. And I thought, yeah, because that's the way I wanted the story to go. I wanted to start with, here are 5 people. Here's where they lived. Here's some information on the Gateway Project and some other things that were probably like tying them together in the community. And then like towards the middle, we get to that night and we get into the investigation, and then like the aftermath and legacy of the case. And I'm so glad I was able to get 5 chapters, because I knew like not having Bill Sterling's family involved, that would not build a big chapter, but I was able to get enough information from people who knew him, and also with some of the case record information that was available about Bill, and maybe some other things that other people had done their research and shared with me, and I had shared some research with them. It definitely all worked out. So I was like super happy, and I'm very glad that people appreciate the fact that we have chapters dedicated to the 5, and you get to know them and you get to understand their story more, so you can see how, what happened on February 24th is a big mystery.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you did some traveling in regard to doing some research for this book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I went out to Yuba County. So I flew out to Sacramento and drove up to Yuba County, worked with the sheriff's department to look over the case files. And I had a few days to do that. And they took me up to the Plumas National Forest, and we traveled up there together, which was a huge help, because my initial plan was, well, I'll just drive up there myself. And they said on the first day, are you going to the Plumas? And I said, yeah, if I'm out here, I got to go. And they said, we'll take you. We're going to show you. And that was unexpected and super helpful, because we drove up there together and we got up to Rogers Cow Camp area. And unfortunately, due to one of the fires, there was a problem getting up to Daniels Inc. campground. So I spent time out there, and I went back to California in 2023 to film Files of the Unexplained, where I was in town, I was being interviewed, and this was all in one day. I was interviewed for the show. I met with some of the family members. and we drove up to the Plumas, and we got up to like the Mountain House area, and the road was closed due to like bad weather or something like that. So that was just a crazy day. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be the one that was going up there to the Plumas. They had someone else, but they weren't feeling well. And they looked at me and said, hey, we kind of have you coming along as sort of like backup information. And do you want to, can you drive us to the Plumas? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so they got me all mic'd up and got cameras on me, and we drove to the Plumas, and that was a heck of a drive. Because the first time I went out, we were driving during the day, and that was easy. But the second time was at night, and it's pitch black up there. And it's like, oh, wow, this is a different experience being up here when the sun is going down, and now it's completely black, pitch black. There's no cell service. You're kind of looking around like, oh man, this is kind of, it was February when we went up there. So this was the time of year that the guys had gone up into the Plumas. And I thought, oh man, there's no way they got lost. I mean, that's what I did for my research for traveling, was those 2 trips.
Yeah, that's incredible. Just to get that contrast of driving there in the day versus night, you would have really seen that difference. Like you just said,
Yeah.
What they would have experienced driving up there at night, you did yourself to see firsthand.
Yeah, and it's one of those trips where the roads, they just wind up into the Sierra Nevada, and when you're on a trip like that, it becomes a longer trip because you're kind of winding up the road, and you have to go slow because, there's wildlife up there, and like a deer, we had a deer like just kind of walk right in front of the road, like not too far from us. And it's like, oh man. And there's people up there who live in the area. And so you have to be mindful of that. And yeah, because during the day you can kind of see the whole Plumas National Forest, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. But at night it's like, ooh, this is kind of creepy. This is a little bit different because there's not much light other than what your car has on the headlights, and you just kind of have to be mindful of your surroundings and everything. So it's not a place you can like go 65 miles an hour through. No, you're going slower than that. And it was a great experience. But I mean, there's so much that just went through my head at the time. Like, man, like they could have turned around here, or they could have turned around here. And so it was just, it's not an easy trip because why you're going up there. So just trying to figure out what happened is the big mystery.
Yeah. Meeting with the law enforcement when you first went out there, I was almost very surprised just now to hear how almost welcoming they were. And you don't hear that a lot when people are investigating cases. It seems like for the most part, law enforcement doesn't want any part of it, but they seemed very open with you in regards to, any research on the case, but even offering to drive you there the first time. That's very surprising to hear because we don't typically hear that.
Yeah. And I didn't know what to expect, but I wrote to them and said, if I come out, can I look at the case files? And they said, sure. Can you give us some dates that you have in mind? Because we'll reserve a conference room. And they went above and beyond the call of duty to be accommodating, and very nice, very, very kind staff. And, a couple people took me to the Plumas, and we were kind of talking about the case the entire time and looking around, and we got out of the car and kind of walked around the area and just got a better perspective of what was going on up in the Plumas at the time. And I mean, they showed me the files they had available to someone like me. If you're a family member, you would have different access to different things. But what they showed me and what they had available, I mean, they were like, what, if you want to come in and take notes, go for it. Anything you can. So that was the rule. If you come in with a pad of paper and a pen or pencil, take some notes, and you're good to go. So what I did is, I think I had something like, I don't know, I had like almost a notebook. I was just kind of going through it, just writing notes like crazy. And I was able to use that information. Plus they gave me copies of the files, but they were redacted. So I didn't have certain information on certain pages, and I'd had to go back in my book like, oh, okay, I've got some of that information here, and that's super helpful. So yeah, and I really appreciate everything they did for me at Yuba County. I mean, they could have been like, nope, and that was that, and that would have been the end of my research, because if I didn't have the case files, that was like the big thing I needed. And having that, it's like, okay, now we've got something. Now I have more information, and that was super helpful.
Being there in person, I mean, it definitely, to the area, where we're discussing this case, it definitely gives a different perspective than myself, for example, just reading about it. Was there anything maybe that you didn't even use in the book, but you took away from that? You spoke a little earlier about, they could have turned here, they could have turned there, but any other little moments from being there in person that maybe had you think a different way with the research you were doing, or maybe solidified something that you were thinking as you were researching?
Yeah, I remember driving. I mean, both times I drove up the way, I'm like, how do you just keep driving? Because it's not a simple straight drive from point A to point B. You just got to look around and go, what is going on here? Like, and that just solidified, driving up to the Pluma solidified, I don't see these guys getting lost, because you can just stop the car, and there's like these turn off places, like where they kind of got like stuff cut into the side of the road where you can like, turn your car around and, go back the other way, because you don't want to, you can't really do a U-turn on these roads too easily in certain spots. So that just solidified it right there. Like, okay, this is, they didn't get lost. But then there's some moments where I'm driving up there like, okay, then what happened? Like, I just don't feel like we've got something here. Like, this is it's so frustrating. We just don't know what happened. Like, why did they go up this way? And there's no explanation, because you have to go through the town of Oroville to get on this road that leads you over a bridge that takes you into the Plumas. So like, this is not one big like, oops, I took a wrong turn.
Right.
I mean, you kind of have to navigate through this city. You have to go through on this road, and you have to go over this bridge, and you have to go up into the Plumas. And there was a point at the time where the road's unpaved, and the driver, Jack Madruga, hated unpaved roads. So it's like, man, come on, like, what is going on here? And it kind of drove me a little bit more crazy. It kind of got me more frustrated, thinking, why? Okay, how? Like, what? I mean, all this is kind of going in my head, and I'm like, I can't make heads or tails out of this right now. Like, I have to step back, wait till I get back to the hotel, and just try to clear my head, because just driving up that way, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Things aren't right.
Yeah. And that was, like I said, it was such a central part of the book, the way you lay out that whole kind of, again, we don't know exactly what happened, but you definitely laid it out best you could. And yeah, you definitely get that feel that this does not make sense. But it's one thing to read it and another thing to experience the drive for yourself, which you were able to do.
Yeah. And that was key to all this, because let's see, someone on Reddit had done the drive, and they had kind of chronicled their travels, and they're like, this is wild. Like, I took this road, I did this, I did that, and they had pictures. And I don't know if the post is still up, but I remember seeing it probably maybe 2018, 2019, and they said, yeah, even that person's like, I just don't get it. And I know other people have gone up that way. Sacramento has an ABC station that did a brief story on the Yuba County Five a few months ago, and they got up that way. And even they were telling me, like, this is middle of nowhere. It's not easy to get up to that Daniels Inc. campground where they found the area where they found 4 of the 5. And they said, like, how are these guys walking that way? I mean, because that's what happened. They abandoned their car and they walked 12 miles to the north to this area, where everything just went wrong. And it's like, man, other people have told me this. Like, it's unbelievable up there.
Yeah. So where you mentioned, for those who read the book, they kind of already know where I'm going with this, but where four of the men were found, there has been one of the men has still not been found to this day, but he hasn't always been viewed necessarily as one of the victims, if you will. He was also for a while looked at as, a possible suspect in this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
And the person who hasn't been found, that's Gary Mathias. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was diagnosed around 1971, and things weren't going well for him because he wasn't taking any medication. But by 1975, he's taking medication, seeing a doctor, his life's back on track. And when you hear about the story, everyone's like, oh, well, if there's a person with schizophrenia in the car, they're responsible for this because they're crazy. And so that's been the response of a lot of people. Well, the crazy guy took the disabled guys up into the woods and got him lost and killed him. And when you see what Gary had been doing with his life, he was back on track. He was doing well. He worked with his stepfather. He was going to the Gateway projects. He was part of their basketball team. And I still think at the time, and even until today, there was some stigma against him having schizophrenia that, oh, he's crazy. And what are you going to do about it? But what Gary does, I don't see him as the reason behind this disappearance. He's not the kind of guy, he's done something like this before. When I see his past arrests and other things that have happened, this doesn't match to some of the other things. And so he's never taken someone on a trip to the middle of nowhere. He's never commandeered a car and done it. You know what I mean? Anything in this case doesn't match anything that was going on with Gary. And so it's easy to see this case as that, or just even all five of them not being smart men and just getting lost, and it's their own fault for being out. But they had been on the road before and they had made trips out of town. They have no history of being lost. But you're right, Gary has been viewed as the victim and the perpetrator, and I see him as a victim. I just don't see him being able to take over a car with four other guys and being like, I'm taking over. And they're like, no, that's not happening. Because there's probably a couple guys in the car who, probably would have just kicked him out and said, all right, you need to call home and have someone come pick you up. And that's the way I see it with this case.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And I know the world that we're in right now doesn't have the best resources in treatment and views on regards to mental health now, but to think back to how it was back then, it was totally different. So it's not surprising that it would have been kind of an easier route to kind of look at, to kind of place possible blame that way, when in reality it's not the case.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you see the case and and everything that was reported at the time. At first they start saying, oh, these men have a slight disability, and then other words are used, and it's like, oh, well, that's totally derailed the case. And today, I've even talked to people about it today, and I remember talking to one individual, and I was explaining the case, and he's like, well, it's the crazy guy who did it, the schizo guy. It's his fault. I'm like, well, yeah, you can say that, but you don't know the case, and it just doesn't make any sense with anything I've done research with and talking with Gary's family and other people. It's just, I think it's just a complete misunderstanding, like you said, of schizophrenia, not having that awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. Since researching and publishing the book on the case, has there been any updates or any movements on getting this case solved?
None. I mean, it's shocking. So you have this book. Mopac Audio did like 8 to 9 part series on the case, and that was released, I believe, 2022. You have another author, Drew Hurst Beeson, who has a book on Yuba County Five. It's called Out of Bounds. There's the series on Netflix. that had the Files of the Unexplained, episode 3 on the Yuba County Five. You had like a 2-day story from the Sacramento Bee back in 2019. You had a story from Sacramento ABC News. All of this, since 2018 on the case, had no leads, nothing. And we thought like something here has got to like get the ball going. Like something's got to
Right.
spark a memory or jumpstart something or get someone to come forward. Nothing. And for a lot of people, it's like, come on, really? Like nothing. Nobody's got anything to say. And I've talked to people off the record, and I feel like some of these people do have something to say, and they're still not saying anything. So, because I can't really speak on their behalf and like feel
Right.
stuff. I don't want to derail anything or mess anything up for an investigation, but it's like, okay, come on. Like, can we get something? And nothing. It's so frustrating. Nobody has anything to add. I do keep in touch with the Yuba County Sheriff's Department, and it's just like, it's still a cold case.
That's so sad that there's still not any movement of justice for these men, as well as for their families who have gone decades with not only no answers, but even just, again, we just talked about the stigma that these men received. It's just so heartbreaking for the families.
Yeah, and what's fascinating for them, and what's been really interesting from their experience, the case ended 1978. It was completely buried for 40 years. And in 2018, a bunch of people who do true crime podcasts and original YouTube content brought the case back. And it was one of those cases where it just wasn't like, oh, hey, it's out there and you got to really find it. Everyone grabbed a hold of it, and it just spread quickly. Like it went wild. And if you look at YouTube, true crime content or podcast or what people talk about with cases, this is like one of the big ones. It's getting up there with things like the Zodiac and D.B. Cooper and some other, infamous cases in world history. And now you've got more eyes on the case than you ever did before, more people talking about the case, and everyone's absolutely perplexed at what happened to the Yuba County Five. And there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of genuine interest in the case because people, what they do is do their own research and deep dive into anything and just absorb as much information about the case. And they're like, man, I just don't see these guys getting lost. Something bad happened that night. If we can figure it out, that would be key to the case. And a lot of people have like gotten in contact with me, or I've done things like this with like true crime clubs or talk to people, and they bring up good ideas or good theories. And, you start to say, wow, I never really thought about that. Or, man, maybe I should take a look at this sort of theory. And it's super helpful. And I'm glad there's a lot of people out there who truly care about the case. They're truly invested. And you've got people from all over the world talking about this case, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So that is an excellent segue into the next question that I had was, in your opinion, and I know this is still an unsolved case, so there are so many directions it could go, but do you have a theory on what might have happened to them? Or is there a theory that was floating out there that you can 100% in your mind rule out based on your research?
The theory I can rule out is Gary went crazy. That's right there.
Okay.
The one my theory kind of goes like this. To leave Chico, the highway splits in two. One path takes you, these two state highways go south. So one goes 99 California Highway, goes into Yuba City. Highway 70 goes into Marysville. If you're on Highway 70, you have an easier chance to exit into the town of Oroville, where they would have had to have exited the highway to get on that, road that would have led them up into the Plumas National Forest.
Okay.
I believe they left the highway for Oroville to do something, either use the restroom, use a payphone, maybe because after the game they went and got snacks, and maybe someone was like, I really wasn't interested in junk food. Is there like something else open? Can I get a burger or something? So whatever they did, going into Oroville, that's where something happened. Now the something is up for debate. Either they ran into someone they had beef with, they ran into some, person or persons who were just either looking for a fight, or maybe they somehow conned them into something, or were one of those people who seem nice, but they just have ill intentions. And from there, I think the whole situation it was just a domino effect. Like everything just fell apart that night, and it led them up into the Plumas. And then from there, they abandoned the car, which doesn't make any sense because you want to stay in a car and not be, knee deep in snow and in freezing temperatures. So
Right.
there was like a clear, like I say, clear and present danger somehow. And all 5 men were of the belief, like, it's do or die. Like we've got to get away from this person, these people, this situation. Something just wasn't going right that night. And it's so hard because we can't piece it together. There's no evidence in the car.
Right.
Like they couldn't really find any additional evidence when they found the 4 men. The trailer, one of the men was found inside like a service trailer used by the Forestry Service. And if there was a clue or any evidence in there, I don't think it might have been kept. So yeah, it's frustrating, but I mean, you can only just get pieces of something. I can't form a full theory because I just pick apart every theory as best I can. And it's like, man, come on. Like that's the best one I can put together. I know other people have done the same that I talked to.
Okay. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
So in regards to feedback from your book, what has that been like from just, a general true crime audience, law enforcement, the families of the victims? What has the feedback from your book been?
The families, they liked the book. They told me that, which made me very happy because I was worried. I'm like, uh-oh. And they were very happy, very supportive. They were, I sent them all copies and they read the book. Some people read the book and, shared their thoughts. And I'm always happy to hear feedback, which is good. And people are very interested in the case and they want that deep dive. They want, what this book is, the Bible. And sometimes you just go out and find what people have to say about the book, like Amazon or Goodreads or something like that. And you see a not great review and it's like, okay, well, you don't like it, next. But I mean, that's life. But when I talk to people about the book, and people have reached out to me and they've got questions, it's like, hey, okay, cool. I mean, I'm all ears, and people have shared their theories with me and they've got a lot of questions, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, I'll answer them. So it's been a great experience. I'm glad people have found the book, and it's people who are either interested in the case or they just come across it and like, I'm taking a chance on this and let's go from there. So yeah. And a shameless plug, it's at Amazon. So
I was going to ask at the end where people can find it, but
Kindle and paperback. So you've got an option. So it's good.
So what is the takeaway, the one thing that you really want your audience and readers to know once they finish reading your book? If there was one thing, if you can narrow it down to one thing.
That, these are 5 people who disappeared. Their case is still unsolved. And we really need to keep this in the spotlight until we have a definitive answer of what happened that night. So at the end of the Netflix series, for the episode on Yuba County 5, Jackie Hewitt's sister-in-law, Claudia, said, let there be justice. And I think that's a great way of saying it. Let there be justice for the Yuba County 5. Let's get an answer for the families. And most importantly, let's find what happened to Gary Mathias, because this is year 47 of the case. So it's, we're getting close to 50 years. hopefully maybe find Gary's remains in the Plumas. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody who is watching in the audience has any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get through them. While people are doing that, I have a question, and it's a little off subject, but the audience here for my channel is a very pet friendly show. I myself has 6 cats that come and go
Okay.
during my show. Do you have any pets, Tony?
Yes. A dog, a cat, 2 rabbits, and we have 1 fish that's he was part of a group, I think a group of 5, 4 or 5. So
Oh.
he's a trooper. So yeah, we've got fuzzy friends around the house. So yeah, they all pretty much get along, and rabbits are pretty chill, and a cat's like, he kind of does his own thing, and our dog's was like he's about 3 years old, so he's got a lot of energy, and he's always up in everyone's business. So
What type of dog?
he is Cavalier, King Charles.
Oh, okay, nice.
They're supposed to be chill, kind of like, hey, I'm just going to sit here on the couch and, relax with you. But he's like, he has moments where he's relaxing and other moments where he's just grumpy, and other moments where he's just angry at the world, looking out the window, barking at everyone. Like,
that sounds like me.
What are you going to do? Like, none of these people
That's
are afraid
awesome.
of you. Other animals are not afraid of you. Like there's a dog he knows next door. It's a German Shepherd. Like, you're not going to bark at her. She's not worried about you. She's not sweating anything. So yeah.
That is amazing. That is
amazing. Pets are fun. Never a dull moment.
Absolutely. So we do have a question. Could the whistling sound it's going to heard be from feedback, say a road traffic police radio?
So when the guys were up in the Plymouth National Forest, there was a guy stuck on the same road where they were stuck. Mm-hmm. And he had been up there for 6-7 hours before them. And so he had a heart attack and was trying to get his car out of the snow. And he claimed that he saw their car pull up and he heard whistling sounds. I don't know if it would be from a police radio. I think it could be anything from just noises in the Plumas to maybe someone out there whistling. There are other people up in that area, but I would assume it's either noises from noises this guy couldn't pinpoint that were like natural noises within the Plumas, or actually someone up there whistling for whatever reason. Because there's some interesting characters up that way, to say the least.
So another question we had from earlier on, have you tried to get the case files from the other 3 counties?
Yes. So with this case, the investigating counties were Yuba County, Plumas County, Butte County, and Sutter County. The county that led the charge was Yuba County. The county that was in charge of the search and rescue was Butte County. I've asked the other counties for records, and they have said they have records, but they don't have records. So I don't know what's going on with them, but they claim that, Yuba County got all those records. And from what I saw in the case files, it was few and far between.
Interesting.
Yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah, we had a comment. I bet Tony's mortgage that Jack M scratched something on the back of his watch or on the strap, it will break the case.
If they had something, they have something. So
yeah.
I mean, if they tried to leave a clue, I would be happy to know. I think something could have been left in the trailer, but from what I had understood, someone had been up to that scene not long after hearing they found one of the men, and they said there was people everywhere kind of walking through that crime scene. They felt like, why isn't this cordon off? Like, why are you not taping up the scene and keeping people out? And so there's been a belief that something could have been lost within, all these people kind of coming in and out of that trailer.
Yeah. We have a comment from Tammy Phillips. Thank you, Dani, for having Tony Wright. Yes, I want to find my Gary. No one ever looked long ago.
Yeah, I know. And Tammy is Gary's sister, and she's one of the people I interviewed for the book. And I've known her for a while, or seems like forever now, knowing all these family members. So yeah, we stay in contact. I still, contact the families, and it's Tammy was a huge help in letting me know more about Gary, and I talked to one of his brother as well, and talked to some other people who knew Gary and got a great perspective on his life. So that's what's nice. The families still come out for these YouTube discussions or other events that I do, and it just shows the support I'm getting and trying to get this story out there to share with everyone.
Yeah.
So Tammy's awesome. We talk a lot about music at times. So she's got great taste, just like me.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in the chat. Yes, we absolutely want some type of answers, movement in this case. There was a few kind of comments as the interview was going on, and a lot of it was that the Gary did it theory just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Kind of exactly what you were saying. That seems to be what the consensus is here from people watching. We had a comment. The theory is that a road traffic police maybe pulled them over as it was 5 guys in a car. They realized what the boys were. Who knows?
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of theories out there, like what happened. We just can't get something solid. I mean, it's like a lot of these missing links that are part of the case, because I was talking to like a true crime group the other night. And I said, man, we don't have the GPS like we have today, or it's like anything like CCTV cameras that you start to see more places here and there. And people now have things like Ring doorbells and dash cams on their car. There was nothing like that at the time. So everything was more or less somebody remembering something. And so there was like one guy at the entire basketball game that they went to that remembered them. And I've always thought, like, man, wasn't there someone else there who saw him? But there was someone who saw, the person who saw him at a convenience store after the game. And then after that, like the guy who saw him on the road, Joseph Shones, who we talked about, who heard the whistling noises. It's like, come on. Like, we need more information. It's super important.
Right. Tammy says, thank you both. Rock on. Thank you, Tammy.
Absolutely.
So, if anybody has any other last minute questions, please put them in the chat. If anybody is watching this on replay, if they weren't able to see it live and you have any comments or questions, by all means, please leave them in the chat as well.
Or I do look around. I do look around YouTube channels to answer, because I've done stuff like this before, and there are some good like comments that come in after the fact, and it's like, ooh, because that's what's been happening. Like talking about this book, people have brought up different types of theories and ideas and possibilities, and sometimes I think, man, why didn't I think of that the first time? And sometimes you just, there's a lot of people out there with some great ideas. That, like, one lady wanted to know, did they ever check the car? Did it have like a carbon monoxide leak? Possibly. If they had the windows up, could that have done anything? I'm like, ooh, I never really thought about that. And unfortunately, the car they were traveling in was scrapped a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Which is like, man, that's another thing. Like, that key piece of evidence is gone.
Yeah.
And we don't have that today. I mean, I would have, if they had the car still, it'd be interesting to see it. Like, okay, what did it look like? And yeah.
And with today's technology, what else maybe could have been found, but
yeah. And I don't know what's left as far as evidence. I wasn't allowed to see the evidence, like any pictures or anything. So that's still a question mark. So if the families go in, they can talk to them and say, what evidence do you have? And I'm sure they'd be allowed to see it. So
So we have somebody just quickly asking about getting a signed
Oh, that's Kenny.
copy.
I know him.
Okay.
Yeah, he's up there, Kenny. I'm getting you that signed copy. He lives over in the UK, so
Oh gosh. Yeah,
I
that's
have to like,
I mean,
the
I'm in the
stamp.
US and the mail
This,
here has been slow. So,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
don't know that Stamp Act and T Act they put on us back in the day. You're gonna have to wait. No, I'm just kidding. I'm getting it to him. So I got my copies ready. So and I got some mailers to send it over to the UK. So I always make
Awesome. We
Kenny's a good dude.
have Karen in the chat says, looking forward to reading this book.
Thank
Awesome,
you.
Karen. You will enjoy it. For anybody, Karen, or if anybody else missed it, again, I know we already said it, where can people find a copy of the book?
Easiest place is Amazon. Kindle, if you use Kindle Unlimited, you're good to go to read the book. There's paperback versions available. And it was, you can get paperback. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, that's always good to have, quick shipping. Genius Book Publishing, which also published the book, has copies available. You also can order copies through like Barnes and Noble. So if you got a Barnes and Noble gift card or an Amazon gift card over the holidays, you can definitely put that to good use. So those are the places where you can get the book.
Okay.
And I do have some upcoming like in-person events to talk about the case. I'll be in Sioux City, South Dakota, at the beginning of March, and I just found out recently I'll be in Houston at one of their libraries in June to talk about the
Nice.
case. So there you go, down in Texas.
Nice. Where can people follow you on social media if they want to learn more and find out any more about some of these events that you're referring to?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, Tony Wright Author. And then with Twitter, I think it should be at Tony Doug, Doug Wright, Wright. So you can find me there. They'll find me. You just do like Tony Wright, Yuba County Five, like my Twitter and Facebook and Instagram accounts pop up. So it's people find me. They're
Awesome.
they're like awesome detectives. Like we'll find that guy. We'll get him.
And I did put your information in the drop down bar for this episode. So if anybody's watching, you can just go right there and click it and it will bring you right to Tony's information.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, are there any upcoming projects that you have in the works besides kind of the book tour stops that you're doing?
Well, I'm doing the book tour and I am working on another case. It's a cold case. I was born and raised in a town in Ohio people may have heard of called Springfield. I don't know if it was in the news or anything, but yeah, there's a cold case from Springfield that's getting close to 60 years old, and I'm actually co-writing the book with a good friend of mine who really wanted to investigate this case, and they got me on board, and I said there needs to be a book. So there'll be more about that later. We're just doing all of like the early work right now. So that's it. It's moving a little bit slower than what we want, but we've made a little bit of progress here, and it'll be the next project I've got, and it's hopefully it's like a year or two away from being published, but wishful thinking.
Well,
I'm working with great people.
I look forward to it whenever things kind of get the ball rolling on that. I'm very much excited. So,
well, thank you. I'm glad you liked the book, and
yes.
yeah, it's great meeting people who are big into true crime and look for all kinds of stuff. And we don't have the nuclear plant. And someone asked if we have that nuclear plant in Springfield, like the Simpsons, but I think that's there. I think someone said they're more Oregon than anything else.
Oh goodness, James Watson. Oh, we do have another question coming in before we let you go. May I ask why Joseph Jones was not mentioned in the Netflix documentary? Sorry, it was really annoying and poor editorial decision. Okay.
That's a good question. I was surprised he wasn't mentioned, and that's something that people who watch the series get into the case, and then they find out about this other guy that saw the men vanish that night. It's like they're like, "Whoa, what's this?" And they're like, read the book or go to the Mopac podcast, and you'll find out more about Joseph Jones. He was up there. He was a witness. He had a heart attack. He is basically the last person to see these men alive, and man, there is a story and a half to this guy. The Cyrus Roanoke said Jones is a real piece of work, and that is the understatement of the century. Dude was something. I tell you what, he is. Oh my gosh, I got a chapter dedicated to him, and that's a fun ride. It's a fun ride. Yeah. When I found out more about him from the police files, I was like, oh wow, he's like the gift that keeps on giving. You find out there was some stuff that just came up with the case, like certain things, and it's like, wow, that's oof. But yeah, with Jones, I mean, he saw something, and we he passed away years ago, but like they never got to like get to the point of what he saw, because the stories were changing and what he remembered wasn't great. So it's like, come on, like we need that information to like help with this case.
Right. And now
it's never a dull moment in the world of true crime.
Oh, well, that's the understatement of the year.
Yeah, I know. It's with this case, I talked to so many people about the case itself, and all the big question marks, and we'll end up talking for hours, and it feels like we're getting somewhere, but we're like talking about the same stuff, and we're trying to like build theories, and we can try to break down theories, and it's, man, all these things that happened that night and have been tied into the case, and the theories that people have, and the rumors, and this and that, it's so much. And I think by reading that book, and I've said it many times, that this case is a journey into madness, and that's an understatement too. And I think the more you read this case and people do understand it's unsolved, that we're trying to get something out of this. If someone has a memory of this night, or February 24th, or what they've heard about the case, any little bit helps. And if you can help, you can help. And it's for the families. They need this more than anything else. They need the answers. And I mean, like I said, we're going on year 47 of the case. That's way too long.
Absolutely. Sadie says, thank you, Dani and Tony, for the information.
Well, thank you for being here, Sadie.
Let's see. Jacob says, I feel like Jones witnessed something and was threatening. That kind of explains why he was crying in the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, when he got to the hospital, he was very emotional. So, especially when talking about all that. So, did he see something that night that kind of stuck with him?
Yeah.
So that's what I think happened. He saw something, but we don't know what.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to start that, Sadie, because absolutely that's what this is about, is getting some type of information and some type of justice for these men and for their families. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Mimi, so this is my aunt, Auntie Mimi. She's a great supporter of my show. She says, thank you both. Great listening to you. It's
always good when you got family coming to check out your shows and to follow and give you support. So I know, like, my parents sometimes will do that. And, my wife and kids are always like, what channel are you going to be on? What are you going to be doing? Like, who are you talking to tonight? What's this? What is this you're doing? You're on YouTube? You got your own channel? What's going on? So yeah, it's cool when people are really interested in what you do, and they're like very curious, and super supportive. So that's really awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Tony, so much for coming on Dani After Dark. I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to do this and to, discuss the case. Everybody get this book. Let's get some movement on this case. And at the very least, for people who aren't familiar with this, this is a great, great book to give you insight into the case and to the men involved in this case. So,
yeah. And thank you for having me on the show. And thanks for all your support. You had a great book review of Things Aren't Right. And I'm super thrilled that you loved the book. And that was an awesome post or video you did on that. And it's great to talk to people who are interested in the case. And it's nice to meet people who've never heard about the case, but really want to know more and are really connected to the men and to the family. So that's really, really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And remember, until next time, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.